America, my name is Osei-Frimpong, and I'm here to talk to you about the election last night. And you got to think about the upside of these kinds of contests because you got to make lemonade out of lemons, people. We got to deal with the hand we're dealt the best we can. And it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world that Trump won this presidential election. And I say this because this takes abortion off of the table as a sufficient issue. Now, the single issue abortion voters are going to feel some sort of way about me saying this, but now in order to win nationwide, you need to talk about something more than abortion. And a lot of these people don't really care about jobs, the single issue abortion voters. They don't really care about jobs. They just care about that they have more rights than their mother. Well, it's complicated because it's not exactly clear that abortion should have ever been a national issue. The Dobbs verdict that sent the issue to the state might actually be the correct one we can live with, because it's not a neat issue. I don't go around telling Catholics that they're wrong about when life starts. I don't want to, if they feel like they're living in a culture of murder, if they countenance such a genocide, I have to respect that. I don't have to respect that. I choose to respect that because, I don't know. Now, I am pro-choice. If a national allowance of abortion were up to me, I would say, okay, let's do it. I talk to people and say, okay, let's do it. I would not veto such a legislation. And at the statewide level, I think that, I am pro-choice. But I support other states having other opinions about that in these United States. That sounds like a perfect arena for federalism. I actually feel a little bit weird that you don't have to notify the guy about the abortion. So I'm flexible. I'm open to hearing arguments. But now the single issue abortion voter, the abortion on demand voter, has to be open to hearing arguments, and they have to start caring about other things, because that demographic historically has not cared about other things. Their life is a little bit cushy because they're young single women, and when you're young, single, and having sex, life's pretty good for you. Let's be honest, because people are nice to you, right? So that demographic is not serious about a jobs policy. That demographic is not serious about how to make their way in the world in a different way, right? So we have contraception and birth control, and there are a lot of, or you could just not have sex. If you're really that word, or you can just get married before you have sex. This isn't a cut and dry issue. I'm not a huge fan of, I'm not a fan of at all of single issue abortion voters. If that's the only thing you care about, then that's a problem. And I think a lot of women just live a cushy and coddled life, so that's allowed to be the only thing that they've come to care about. I ran into this 70-year-old lady, 75, no, she was 76-year-old white lady married to a retired doctor, and she was talking about how Trump's victory radicalized her in 2016. And I'm thinking, this woman, she lived through the civil rights movement, she lived through Vietnam, and it took Trump's victory in 2016 for her to get political. She's like, oh, before that I wasn't really political. I'm like, well, you just lived a cushy life. So we need to be honest about what it means that single issue abortion voters live a cushy life, so they don't really have to care about anything else. Now, granted, some people say well, abortion is an economic issue. Yeah, but if you actually cared about economic issues, you worried about other things first, right? So the best thing about this election is that it takes abortion off the table as a sufficient issue. Now it can only have to be one of a constellation of issues you care about in the coalition you need in order to win, because you can't depend on it being the issue. Now, if Democrats try to pretend on it like that it is the single issue, their candidacy will lose, because this was a fair recitation, a fair rehearsal of what happens to a nationwide abortion candidate who has nothing to say about anything really except that she's pro-choice. Right? I think this was a fair referendum on abortion as a single issue campaign. You need to actually convincingly talk about other things. Now, Kamala Harris tried to come up with other plans. But, when she talks about jobs, her eyes glaze over and even she gets bored. She just doesn't feel it. And that's who she is. She talks about abortion. She's serious. She talks about jobs. You know that she's not really going to make sure that every family has the means to secure themselves productively and the discretionary power to do those things, right? So what happens for progressives now is they need to actually come up with a politics that's bigger than abortion. And that's good for progressives. It's good for the Democratic Party, right? Because you have to understand that Trump is a placeholder president. You're going to have to deal with Vance. And Vance is going to be running up the scoreboard for the next 4 years. He's got a whole Congress. So he's going to be running up the scoreboard for the next 4 years. And you're going to have to go against him if you actually think that you're right. And you're going to have to do it with more than just abortion. Because if abortion alone didn't beat Trump, it's sure not going to beat Vance. It's sure not going to beat Vance. So you're going to have to come up with a policy platform that actually secures the rights of all people in a meaningful way, right? So the best thing about Harris's victory for progressives is that it takes abortion off of the table as a sufficient issue. It now is relegated to being one of a constellation of issues. And it makes people who think that being a single issue abortion voter is enough, it unambiguously tells them that it is not enough. You need to come up with more. You need to have something to say about immigration. You need to have something to say about what borders mean. You have something to say about what jobs mean and the difference between welfare and a job and in the productive power and what it means, what families mean, and not just giving goodies to families, but actually securing the family unit so families can decide the character of the goodies that they give to their own kids. Right? Liberals have a habit of wanting to give away goodies and ignore institutional structures in an important way, especially the family. And so this is why they're bad. But I'm going to talk about that on a different video. I just want to do a quick video about the biggest upside of Trump's victory for progressives is that it forces the coalition the progressive coalition to become more than just a single issue abortion coalition, which is good. Yeah. So you got to make lemonade out of lemons. I'm going to do a different video on why the poors, people under 100,000 and again, people under 50,000, so dollars a year, voted for Trump. That video is coming up. Why the poors voted for Trump. The working class and the poors voted for Trump. If you appreciate what I'm doing, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com. Kick in $5, $15, or $50. You know what? I'm just gonna cut the video into 3 sections and just go. All right, part 2. Why the poors voted for Trump. People the CNN polls will tell you that the poors voted for Trump because, the CNN poll will tell you that the poors voted for Trump. The working class and the poor, people who make under $100,000 a year, which is a lot of people, right? They voted for Trump. It wasn't a lot, wasn't by a lot, but they voted for Trump. And what does it mean that they voted for Trump? Do they mean that they think Trump is better for the economy? No. It's not necessarily the case that the poor and the working class people voted for Trump because of the economy. It's quite possible they thought that Trump would secure a government that allowed them the freedom to determine their own life without having to use their money to protect them against liberal excesses. You have to understand that if you make under $100,000 a year, you don't have the excess money to necessarily send your kid to private school. That means, if there is a liberal agenda of turning your kids gay or trans, you're going to have to send them to government school anyway. You don't have the money for all of these enrichment activities. You don't have the discretion to protect yourself as a prophylactic against cultural liberalism. And cultural liberalism, make no mistake, cultural liberalism wants you to get a divorce. Cultural liberalism wants your son to feel bad about becoming a man. Cultural liberalism wants your daughter to be able to get birth control without talking to you first. I ran into a parent who found out their daughter was on birth control because of birth, and like that. I do not, because their boyfriend's parent got the birth control for them or hooked it up so that the daughter got the prescription. That nonsense needs to go away. So cultural liberalism wants to market certain lifestyles to your children that you don't have the resources to defend against. So you need a government to protect you from cultural liberalism, right? So it's not necessarily that the poor's, the people making under $50,000, and then again, people making under $100,000, think that Trump is going to do better for them economically. They think that Trump is going to provide the government prophylactic against cultural liberalism. And that is a different argument from the idea that they're just economic populists and they think that Trump will give them money. Because what do people over $100,000 spend their money on? Usually being able to take their cultural liberalism a la carte. Right? They can send the kids to Catholic school, but still like be cosmopolitan about borders. like they can pick and choose. They can have a gay kid but not trans, and they can get into this right suburb that they want to with the kids of their own milieu, and they can pay for all of these other things that people who make $50,000 and under $100,000 can't. They can pick and choose what forms of liberal excesses that their children are exposed to. Whereas people who make under $50,000, under $100,000 can't pick and choose. They got to deal with the world as it is. So they don't want a world with legalized drugs where everything smells like pot. They don't want that for their kids. By the way, if you appreciate what I'm doing, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, or $50, because I'm going to get you through the next 4 years with a better progressive politics. And that's my goal, because we need to make lemonade out of lemons, and we need to understand the argument of what's going on. And I was saying before that Latinos don't live in the United States in order to become Latinx, Latinx, right? Like they don't want that. That's not what they live here for. No, they want to make money, own property, be good Americans. They don't want to become something other than what they are and what they decide themselves to be. And what we have to understand in a liberal economy, it actually invades family formation. It invades civil society and turns everything into a market, right? So if you have people marketing that kind of lifestyle, that's not really particularly great for, people who care about families, right? There's a reason why married people went for Trump and the single catless demographic went for Democrats in general and Harris in particular. Right. So we need to take that seriously, and we need to understand that cat ladies of the world, they need a more robust politics, a politics that will protect families against from the cultural excesses of liberalism. And like I said, liberalism, that's the correct sense that they want that your family will be more vulnerable to you getting a divorce, your kid turning out trans, your sons hating themselves for becoming men, your women on birth control for reasons that you don't know. Depending on which liberal you talk to, they could even have an abortion without even you finding out. So if you want a protection from all of that, you just vote for Trump. And that's what the GOP can now pitch to working class and poor Americans. Because liberals are careless. These are the liberals. Those are the people who closed your schools just because of COVID. But they closed your schools. These are the people who decided that your kids don't need to learn how to learn phonics. They can just learn sight words or whole words. So pretty much teaching your kids how to guess. Liberals are careless and they're bad. I've said before on other streams, other videos, that liberals in America are the worst parents in America. They just have money for the rehabs and all of the remediation that has to deal with their awful kids. And the kids that they have made awful. So people vote for Trump as a protection, as a prophylactic against cultural liberalism. To protect their family, because that's what people spend money on anyway. So if the people over $100,000 can spend money picking and choosing which aspect of cultural liberalism invades their family, the people under $100,000 don't have that excess disposable income to pick and choose and buy prophylaxis. They need the government to make sure that their neighborhood doesn't smell like pot, that drugs are kept out of their school, that their kids aren't being marketed lifestyles which are not particularly healthy by people who are not going to have to deal with the fallout of the lifestyle that is being marketed to them. And that is worth money. And that is worth money to poor and working class people. So even if they don't agree with Trump on even economic issues, the calculus, and it's not the worst calculus, that it's actually cheaper to take the pay cut for a government that will protect my family and my ability to determine my family, is actually a reasonable calculus. Because if you raising screwed up kids, raising kids screwed up, especially by liberalism, is expensive. You know, the rehabs and the wasted years and all of that. It's expensive raising screw ups. So if Trump will make it easier for me to raise my kid against some of these lifestyles that are marketed as their choice, then I'll take the economic hit and vote for the conservative, right? So that's why the poors will vote for Trump, even though it might not be in their economic interest. And you're not going to get them back by just promising them a raise, because what they would buy with that money is cultural protection. And Trump is just offering them cultural protection wholesale, outright. So they don't have to make money and then secure the cultural protection themselves. Trump is just saying, don't worry about it. If I become president, you don't have to worry about your kid coming home wanting to be trans. Which, for people who don't have the resources to actually deal with that, that's actually an attractive bargain. Right? So you're going to call me all sorts of names because of this, but I'm just telling you the truth. And by the way, if you want me to keep telling the truth, www.funkyacademic.com. And I'll keep doing what I'm doing. So, first, Trump's election kills abortion as a single issue. Now abortion must be a part of a constellation. Second, Trump won the working class because he offers cultural protection, not economic protection. Because if you give that working class money, what they do with it is buy cultural protection. So economic arguments won't win. You need to say that there's a mea culpa on cultural liberalism and we might have gone too far and we jeopardize families in ways that are not appropriate. We jeopardize family authority. I'm going to do a different video on spheres of authority that deals with both why gun rights are important and also why family authority is important and also why political authority is important and how they're different and how they all need to be preserved in their sphere and how just reducing everything to political authority is not great. But that's a different video. So, number 3, I'm going to talk about the real best part of Trump winning, and that's Vance. Vance as your hungry, young vice president. Vance is your hungry, young vice president. Vance is going to be a problem. Vance is going to be a problem in 2028. And the Democrats are either going to go whole neocon, ridiculous globalist to defeat him, or they're going to actually just become better. They're going to have to actually become better than Vance, because he's going to be an entire problem. He's going to talk about family in a way that's relevant. He's going to talk about child tax credits. He's going to actually talk about families. And like I said, if liberals want you to get divorced, Vance is going to want you to have a nuclear family. And he's going to make arguments about that. And he's going to be very comfortable talking about the importance of family. And you know what? His book is good. It's not this ghost-written memoir that politicians put up. Hillbilly Elegy is actually a good book about degenerate white families that are too violent, lack culture, And some have money, some don't, but they're all degenerates. And he thinks that that's a problem. And he thinks that kids deserve more than that kind of family. Right? And so he talks about his degenerate family and how that wasn't quite fair. And then he contrasts that with his wife's family. He's like, the first time he met Usher's family, he's like, oh, these people are functional. They're not violent. They work with their kids on homework. They know what to do. So you're dealing with Vance in 2028 is one of the best things about Trump in 2024. If you just forget Trump, this guy Trump now gives Vance a platform, and he's the one you got to worry about. And he's going to be trying to run up the score, especially now that he's got a Republican Congress. Now there are no real excuses, right? So the way we keep Vance accountable is saying, like, look, you had a Republican Congress. Why didn't you do the things you want to do? But now I think I have a problem with Vance in some ways, in a lot of ways, actually. But I think he's a better on some issues, including families, than the Democrats. And if he moves the Republican Party to the left on family issues, then the Democrats actually have to come up with a more substantive, coherent family policy about how family figures as an institution of right. And how property figures as an institution of right. They have to outdo the right on families. Or like Vance rolls over them in a Reagan 84 type of victory. Right? So this will actually make the Democrats get more serious, because like if you think Trump took a few of your unions, Vance is going to take a third of them. Vance is going to take a third of the unions unless the Democrats actually come up with a more substantive policy. That's simply the case. That's simply the case. And I think that's good for the Democrats. So there's an upside. There is an upside. Now, the downside is going to be the judiciary. But let's be honest, like Trump did his work on the judiciary in his first time. Judiciary's gone for foreseeable future. We're going to win on culture. Also, don't forget, in 2020, Kamala Harris said that she wanted to pressure, when she was running for president, she wanted to pressure the CEO of Twitter of kicking off Donald Trump's Twitter account. Like, she has an authoritarian streak, and who knows if I would have survived. Maybe I would have been labeled disinformation and then now had to apply for a license in order to have this show. So you have to understand that Kamala Harris, there is an authoritarian side to her when she is speaking that's really hard to be held accountable. And it's not obvious that I would have survived 4 and 8 years under her reign, because there would have been things that I said that was, unbecoming for her. And it's possible that she would have gotten tired of such critique and then put pressure on, Elon Musk's X or Twitter or YouTube to censor me as hate speech. I don't have to worry about that as much with Trump. I don't think so. Who knows if X itself Twitter would have survived a Harris presidency. I don't know. I think it's more likely that she would have just gotten rid of X than it is that Trump will go like whole fascist, like suspending elections like Zelensky. Not to mention, I think this is good for Ukraine, because Ukraine stops being a big old prison where men can't leave, because now Ukraine has to strike a deal with Putin. So go ahead. I'm going to look at the chat while I do. I can answer some questions on chat while I wrap up, but I wanted to get to all of my points that abortion no longer becomes a sufficient issue for National Democrats. They need to run on other things. Oh, we need to start blaming white women. White women did this. They did it. Black men voted 82% for Kamala Harris, who promised us nothing in particular. White women voted 52%, 69% in Georgia, but 52 nationwide for Harris. And they were the biggest demographic. So it's not just I'm picking them out randomly. They are the biggest demographic. They are, I think, 19% of the entire electorate. They are the biggest demographic. And the biggest demographic went to Trump. That's the demographic that picks winners. And they also pick our topics. Abortion became an issue because there are white women on both sides of it. So when white women team A fights white women team B, we all get kind of conscripted into the battle, into the arena, right? And that becomes our politics. Abortion is an issue because there are white women on both sides and they all vote. So don't let anyone tell you that white women didn't do this. This is like, we have the politics we have because the nation created the quality of white women that it created. It didn't have to. I've done other videos about like cultural womanhood in the United States is as a function of like a race strategy. I've done other videos on that, but white women did this. And don't let them blame anybody else. And don't let them tell you, well, the 52% of white women who did it, especially the married ones, are oppressed and they're confused about their interests. No, they're not. They just know that their interests also are immediately tied with their sons and their fathers and the inheritances and the husbands who run their businesses that get their minority contracts, women-owned and minority contracts that are actually run by the husband, but the wife puts their name on it. Like, white women aren't voting against their interests. They know how their bread is buttered. And they also know the soft life, the relatively soft life they have. Because their men are doing a lot of hard work. So let's stop pretending. Let's stop pretending that Melania Trump doesn't know what she's doing. She clawed her way out of whatever Eastern European country she came from to become First Lady. Like, they are not an oppressed group. Right? And now the white women who are one of the more annoying factions of the Democratic Party have to play ball with me. And when they have to play ball with me, it gets a little bit complicated because they'll say like, well, you have to support a nationwide abortion allowance. And I'll say, well, how about we have a commission to study it? Just like the way they talk about a commission to study reparations. How about we have a commission to study what abortion would do nationwide? Well, we had, I don't care. I want a commission to study. I can say we had reparations for Japanese internment. So now these white women have to deal and play ball on issues that they're not comfortable with, including like jobs. They have to actually talk about jobs, and not just white class jobs. They have to actually talk about working class jobs. And they have to do it with more creativity than J.D. Vance. So, iron sharpens iron, and we need to keep, unless you want the Democratic Party to become the party of elite wives, the party of professional class elite wives, I'd rather not that be the case. Now, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50, and I will help you over the next 4 years get through this in my way. My next show is going to be on Amy Chua's book, Battle Hymn of the Toggle Mother, and because she gets a lot right and a lot wrong in an important way, and because I care about families a lot, and so I'm going to talk about that book. And it was a nice book. I read it in like a day. And if you have any questions, I don't know, hit me up in chat or go to the comments and put them in comments. But there are upsides to this. And there's definitely an upside to either a J.D. Vance presidency or a Democratic Party that now has to deal with a J.D. Vance campaign and him trying to run up the score through a Donald Trump campaign, Donald Trump presidency. So thank you for your time. I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. Go ahead and send this to all of your friends. Post it on your media because people need to hear that there is an upside. There's a progressive upside to Harris's loss. All right. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you later on this week. Peace.